of what our parents would deem as successful, which are things that you rhymed off, I think, before we started recording, like girls are in pageants and basketball and church, and those would be the main tenets. Oh, and being good at school, those were like the main tenets of success for being a Filipino. And I did all of those things. So I was a successful Filipino, and also was being coddled to be accepted by my white peers. So not speaking the language, or working on French, and privileging and prioritizing those sorts of things. So it's been tense. It's like this tense battle of reconciling my history and reclaiming the things that were regrettably held back from me.
Today, we have one of my inspirations and a strong leader in our community, Filipinas of HamOnt, Robin Lacambra. So Robin Lacambra is a social justice advocate and empowered embodiment educator, blending practices like Pilates, yoga, somatics, and mindfulness, sharing them from anti-oppression, trauma-aware, and eating disorder-informed frameworks. Through all body-loving movement classes, teacher training, and personal development programs, individual somatic soul coaching, executive coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements, and empowers to serve the collective good. So thank you for joining us today, Robin. We appreciate your time with us, and we look forward to hearing and celebrating you.
Thank you so much for the invite. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So we did briefly describe you and what you do in our community, but we would love for you to share and introduce yourself to our community, and share whatever you would like about yourself.
It's such an open-ended question. Where do I begin? But thank you so much for introducing me. And I guess on a more personal note, I am a mother of 2 kids. I'm raising mixed race children. They're both, they both identify as boys right now, but who knows? My oldest son has been toying around with non-binary, and maybe it's because he just learned what it is and is into it, or maybe he will come out as trans and non-binary, which would be exciting. So the conversation of straddling 2 cultures feels extra alive for me, given that I have half Filipinx, half white children. I moved to Hamilton when I was pregnant with my second son. I was born and raised in Toronto. My parents met in Toronto, and then they had me and my sister. And it always felt like culture always felt like a struggle for me, where my parents were very much, they're immigrants, so they're very much still so tied to their cultural ways of being. And so I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place of not really understanding the roots. I'm excited to continue reflecting and to continue telescoping out and feeling into what it means to be a Filipina in Canada or in Hamilton.
What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you just love?
I am always making weird noises or like audible exhales as a way to self-regulate, and my kids will now do it too. So we like motorboat our lips like a or just like shake. So that is a thing that I do, and it may look absurd to see a grown woman shaking and making weird noises, but I assure you it is a really effective tool for mental and emotional health.
You mentioned a while ago that you moved here in 2016, but what's the story with Hamilton? Why Hamilton?
The short answer is that we couldn't afford to live in Toronto and raise a family in Toronto. And I just was kind of over Toronto. Same with my husband. sorry Toronto, or sorry to friends and family that are still there, but it just felt like too much. It felt like too dense. It felt like we had to work too hard just to continue to tread water, and the pace was too fast for what we wanted. And Hamilton felt more spacious, like in all of the ways spaciousness could be present. It felt like there's less density, there's literally more space to occupy or to like exist in. With a 10 to 15 minute drive, you're in the woods, and that's something that feels really precious, that you can be that close to nature but still have all of the urban amenities that you'd get living in a big city. So yeah, we love all of the intersections of experiences that Hamilton has to offer. I don't have Filipino buddies here that have similar or aligned values in terms of what service means, what authentic self-expression and self-exploration means, and that kind of interpersonal discovery. I don't have, and valuing art and valuing politics and social movements. I don't really have or know of any Filipinos in Hamilton that are down for those sorts of things, except for you, Jessica, and now you, Annabelle.
Yay.
Now you. Just the two of you are my connections.
Yeah.
Once we have uploaded all our interviews, then
Right.
you will see, like for us, like Jessica and I were just so surprised that there are actually many Filipinas thinking the same thing that we're thinking, having the same values that we also value, or wanting the same things that we want to discuss. So the previous one, what Filipino expression do you use to remember the most, and when do you use it?
Oh no. My mom is so rude. So there are many expressions, and like my kids mimic them too. I'm like, if you only knew what that is. I'm gonna nip it in the bud. But ay nako is something that I hear all the time, and then the things that follow can make it more intense. But my sister and I, we abbreviate it to INUX. So we'll just be like, INUX. And my mom is like, that doesn't make any sense. We're like, INUX, that's fine. Or my husband and I, instead of saying maraming salamat, we'll say marang salams. Marang salams.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's unique. Yeah, that's unique.
It isn't as present for me in the moment. Personally, it is present for me in terms of how I want to raise my kids. Like, I want my kids to be proud and proud, and so it's more so on a meta level of trying to raise them anti-racist, anti-colorist. And they do have lots of exposure to my family and to the language. One of my biggest regrets, though, is that my family stopped teaching me Tagalog and Ilocano when I became school age. So it was the main language at home before I started school, and then when I started school at 4, they stopped, and they forced me to speak English so that I could fit in. Like, they thought it would mean I would be a more successful student and a more successful, the model minority thing. Like, I was their hope to be their model minority and fit in with the white people. And so that's always been a hard thing, where I regret not being able to speak Tagalog or Ilocano. I can understand it for the most part, but I can't speak it. And I'm fluent in French. Like, I can speak French fluently, but I cannot. I wouldn't be able to survive in the Philippines. I would be able to survive in a French-speaking country, which is so sad. For me, that's so sad that the way that I was raised was really to privilege anything that was more white. But before I became a parent, so much of my identity was trying to reclaim what was held back from me, which is when I found a group of young Filipino artists and culture creators in Toronto. There was a center called the Kapisanan Arts and Cultural Community Center, and that was a really important phase for me to go through, to meet Filipinos who were trying to evolve what it meant to be a young Filipino, meaning not just prescribing to the status quo of what our parents would deem as successful, which are things that you rhymed off before we started recording, like girls are in pageants and basketball and church, and those would be the main tenets. Oh, and being good at school, those were like the main tenets of success for being a Filipino. And I did all of those things. So I was a successful Filipino, and also was being coddled to be accepted by my white peers, so not speaking the language, or working on French and privileging and prioritizing those sorts of things. So it's been tense. It's like this tense battle of reconciling my history and reclaiming the things that were regrettably held back from me. The main motivation was my own personal healing. Like empowered embodiment is the literal opposite of the way Filipinas are raised, right? Like we're meant to be like submissive, to stay small, to stay quiet, to like shrink, like be the meek, good girl. So I live majority of my life being silenced, being trained to not ask questions, being trained to just do the thing, like getting that kind of programming from my family, and then also facing the sorts of programming when I was out in the world of being in a brown body, being in a large body, being in a not being white. I felt very I hated my body. I hated the color of my skin. I hated when my mom cooked pancit and lumpia, because then it would be in my hair, and no matter how much I like took a shower or sprayed perfume, you could always smell it. And I hated everything about me. And so empowered embodiment, what led me to create this program and to grow my career in the wellness industry, is for radical self-acceptance. It's like, why spend your life trying to be someone other than you're not? And what would be possible if you allowed, like if you accepted and you gave permission for your skin color to be what it is, to be free from all of the rules and expectations and the this, that was imposed on me for my entire life under the Filipino household of my parents. And I love you, Mom and Dad. You did the best you could, and I love you so much. And also it was so oppressive, and it wasn't their fault, because they too were having the same limitations and same expectations put onto them. It's just like inherited, right? These values are inherited, and these ways of being are inherited. And so empowered embodiment, my studio Good Body Feel is the goal was to break the cycle of what kept me feeling imprisoned, or what kept me feeling like I wasn't worthy, or that I wasn't a good enough Filipino because I couldn't speak the language, or a good enough Canadian because I'm not white. So empowered embodiment is about radical acceptance of exactly who you are. You don't have to change. You don't have to wait. You don't have to change to be fully deserving of love, connection, validation, attention, and feeling strong. So that's the main motivation, was my own healing, a way for me to like shed all of the things that were burdened on me, and with the hypothesis that my own healing, the tools that I use for my own healing, would be useful for other people too. And it is, and it has been. We all have our version of choppy waters. And so let's talk about how to navigate the boat on those choppy waters. And that's what is the sustained motivation of continuing my empowered embodiment coaching programs with Body Feel.
That is not like a career, it's the love of your, it's like a love story that you're living. And I envy you in a way.
Oh, thank you. I love that it's a love story. Oh my God, I can cry. Yeah, it is a love story. It's a love story to myself, and I denied myself of that love for a long time. So it feels that is such a beautiful reflection. Witnessing my mom was a big inspiration too, because I just saw how burdened she was with things that she didn't need to burden herself with. Like, she would never share her problems, ever. Like, she would always be like, if you're strong, you don't have problems. If you're strong, you just fix your mistakes, you don't ask for help. Like, that was her definition of strength. And I witnessed how much that hurt her and hurt me and my sister in the end too, because our hurt is contagious, and so witnessing that, it was like my pendulum swung the other way, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna always talk about my problems, I'm always gonna ask for help, I'm never gonna pretend that I'm too strong to be vulnerable. And in fact, my definition of strength is going to include vulnerability. It's going to include needing to ask for help. It's going to include suffering, as a way to just try it on, because of what I witnessed with my mom, and not just my mom, my family, and how they operated. It's like, wow, this would all be so much easier if you just asked for help and admitted that you needed help, and admitted that you were suffering, and admitted that you were hurt. It would be way easier if you did that. And I definitely have such deep nostalgia for the healing and the connection that I tapped into when I was in Toronto through Cup of Sun. And it would be amazing to have something like that here, where we are supporting and collaborating and writing grants for each other, and encouraging each other to write our own love story and to live our own love story and to do it together. I would really love to see that. Shamelessly self-promote, I have a podcast called Empowered Embodiment, and I interview folks of various industries to talk about how they find empowerment through their work, and how our bodies are a necessary starting point for us to feel strong and to do our work with integrity. So Empowered Embodiment is my podcast, and Good Body Feel is a movement studio that now is online, so you can join in from anywhere, and all of the teachers that teach at Good Body Feel, the way that we share movement is rooted in anti-oppression, just like just said at the start. We work to make movement joyful and accessible and welcoming, regardless of age, body type, skin color, whatever. It doesn't matter how you present in the world. It's possible for you to feel good in your body, and we want to help with that. So Good Body Feel. And on Sundays at 9:30, we host a class that is exclusively for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So to all of the Filipinx folks listening, that means you too. And it's free, and it's led by Black instructors on rotation. So I just hire Black instructors from all over Turtle Island or North America, and they lead their version of movement. So it's a really great way to connect in a wellness space. When you log on to a screen and just see a bunch of brown and black bodies, it's a powerful thing. So that's something that I'm proud of and encourage everyone to take advantage of. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to watch the interviews and get to know other Filipinas in Hamilton and start collaborating with all of them. So thank you so much for your energy and effort to remind us that we're all here.